Right now we have a very special guest with us. This is Tom Kalil on your screens, who is the Deputy Director for Technology and Innovation for the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy and Senior Advisor for Science, Technology, and Innovation for the National Economic Council. The White House has been an incredibly tremendous advocate for the maker movement, in particular making in education, and even though Tom couldn't be here in person today, he still wanted to have the opportunity to address the room, and we're so thrilled to have him. So thank you so much, Tom, and we welcome you to get started.
Great, and I'm sorry I can't be there in person, but I want you to know I did shave for you this morning. So what I thought I would do is give you a little sense for why the White House has been paying attention to the maker movement, what do we think are the most important trends, and then talk about what we hope to accomplish with the White House Maker Faire that we're going to be having next week on the 18th. And I like to say that there are a number of important trends that are driving the maker movement. One is a cultural trend, and that is just the growing number of people who are identifying as makers, who are interested in being producers as well as consumers of things, who are showing up at maker fairs, like the over 120,000 people who are showing up at the Maker Faire in Northern California, the maker fairs that are popping up all over the country, the growing interest of makers in passing it on by serving as mentors for young makers. So I think that's the important, the first important point is just the growing number of individuals who are self-identifying as makers. Then I think that there's an important technological component to this. That is that the tools that are necessary to design and make just about anything are not only becoming more affordable, they're also becoming easier to use. So a good example of that is that it used to take you months in order to know how to use a computer numerically controlled machine tool, and now makers are getting started in days because they no longer have to learn this language called G-code, and they can use CAD software to get started right away. So not only are the hardware and software tools becoming less expensive and easier to use, we now have models for shared access to those tools. So for the price of the gym membership, you can join something like a tech shop and get access to $1 million worth of machine tools. So that's the important technological trend. Then there's an important economic trend, and that is that whenever you lower the cost of doing something, people will do more of it. So in the same way that open source software and cloud computing lowered the cost of doing an IT startup, and you can now have the proverbial 3 people living on ramen noodles for a couple months, and they'll be able to launch their own startup company because they won't have to go out and raise millions of dollars to spend on servers, but they can just put cloud services on their credit card. You're beginning to see the same phenomena emerge in the world of physical objects in addition to online services. And then finally, the other thing that's happening is that a growing number of institutions and organizations are beginning to embrace making. They're recognizing that it can advance important goals that they have as organizations. So, for example, you see universities like MIT deciding that they're going to allow applicants to MIT to be able to submit not only their GPA and their SAT scores, but their maker portfolio. Or Case Western Reserve University deciding that they are going to invest in a 50,000 square foot facility that will have coffee on the ground floor, design, prototyping, and fabrication space on the intermediate floors, and an incubator on the top floor. or companies like GE and Intel making collaboration with the maker community a really important part of their open innovation strategy. Or Ford discovering that by serving as an anchor tenant for a tech shop, they were able to dramatically increase the number of patents that their employees were filing. Those are some of the trends, you know, the cultural trend, the technological trend, the economic trend, and the fact that you now have a growing number of institutions and organizations that are embracing making, whether it's companies, schools, universities, libraries, museums, cities who are looking at making as an important part of their economic development strategy, labor unions, looking at apprenticeship programs in digital manufacturing. So the reason that the White House is focused on this is, number one, we think that it could inspire more young people to get interested in STEM in the same way that previous generations have been, an initial entry point for them was a chemistry set. So is there something that can play that role in the 21st century? And we think that making and the ability to design and prototype something that's personally meaningful to the student is something that has the potential to play that role. So that's one reason we're really focused on this. And the second is the role that it can play in innovation and entrepreneurship. Again, if you look at the history of the PC revolution, that the Apple computer was developed by Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs, and they developed the Apple I computer because they wanted to show off to the fellow members of the Homebrew Computer Club. So we might not have had something like the Apple computer in the absence of these hobbyists who are getting together. And we're beginning to see the same phenomenon with respect to the maker community. People may start off doing something as a hobby, but they may decide, hey, this is something that I could actually make a living doing. And again, Economics 101, if you lower the cost of doing something, if you make it easier to design and prototype things, then people will be able to come up with more new ideas, and the barriers to innovation and entrepreneurship in the manufacturing world will be reduced in the same way that cloud computing and open source software has reduced the barriers to innovation in IT and online services. The Maker Faire that the White House will be having on June 18th, we hope to, first of all, increase the visibility of the maker movement, and in the same way that the president has been doing with these science fairs. He said, if you win the NCAA or the Super Bowl, you get to come to the White House. The same thing should be true if you win the Intel Science and Engineering Fair, or a FIRST robotics competition, or any number of other competitions. And as a result, the president has met some really remarkable students, kids who are at 16 already figuring out how to use functionalized gold nanoparticles to develop anti-cancer approaches that deliver drugs to tumor cells and leave healthy cells untouched, which really makes all the White House staff feel like slackers, because I don't know about you, but when I was 16, I was primarily playing Dungeons and Dragons as opposed to figuring out a cure for cancer. So we hope to do this same thing with the White House Maker Faire by increasing the visibility of the maker movement, but also getting organizations both inside and outside the government to think about what it is that they could do to promote making. So a wide variety of federal departments and agencies will be making commitments, but we're also going to see commitments from mayors. A large number of mayors have said that they want to take the Mayor's Maker Challenge. We have universities doing the same thing, companies, nonprofits, libraries, museums. So I think we're really going to see a lot of momentum coming out of the maker movement, coming out of the White House Maker Faire. I think you're going to see commitments that relate to achieving a goal of having really vibrant maker ecosystems in 100 or more communities across the country. You're going to see commitments that relate to education and workforce development. I think that you're going to see commitments that relate to, over time, increasing the value and variety of what it is that a small team of makers can produce. And I think that you will see commitments from departments and agencies about what it is that they see that making can do for their agency. How can they collaborate with the maker movement and the maker community to advance their agency mission? I think we're seeing a ton of really creative examples of that already. So for example, one of the things that we're seeing is a really interesting collaboration between makers and people who are interested in citizen science. So one team, for example, developed a open source underwater robot that costs less than $900. That is dramatically increasing what it is that a citizen's explorer, someone who's interested in oceanography, is capable of doing. And so one of the things that we're very interested in is how can we see more of those types of projects so that the types of things that citizen scientists and citizen explorers can engage in will be enhanced by the development of these open hardware platforms. So that's sort of an overview of what it is that we'll be doing. We're also going to be encouraging agencies to get involved in a day of making, because obviously for security reasons we can't bring 100,000 people to the White House. So we're going to be encouraging agencies and our private sector partners to promote making activities on the 18th in their communities. So for example, Tech Shop has agreed to have an open house for all of their tech shops so that people can come in and see the wide variety of tools that are there, everything from water jets that can cut through 3 inches of steel to 3D printers, computer numerically controlled machine tools, and laser cutters. And we're hoping that other organizations take similar steps. So with that as an overview, I would be happy to answer any questions that you have or get some advice from you about things that you think federal departments and agencies could do that would have the biggest impact on promoting making and in the area of education, dramatically expanding the number of students that have the opportunity to design and make something that is personally meaningful to them. Not to use too many Steve Jobs anecdotes, but one thing he said that I think was really interesting is that early on in his childhood, he had the opportunity to have a Heath kit, and he said that gave him an incredible sense of agency because the complex objects that he saw in his environment, he knew were no longer these magical things that just kind of appeared, but he had the sense that he could actually make them because he'd been involved in putting something together using a Heath kit. And I think that is a really important disposition to be able to give to the next generation of scientists, engineers, entrepreneurs, and that's why I think this is so important for us to focus on both from the point of view of education and workforce, but also the role that it can play in encouraging and promoting innovation and entrepreneurship. So thanks for the opportunity to talk, and looking forward to getting any questions that you have or suggestions from the audience as well.
Great. So let's take some questions from the back.
Hi, thank you so much for talking to us. My name is Hillary Easton, and I'm currently with the World Bank, and I have a question for you. So you mentioned that a lot of companies, of course, are trying to integrate more closely with the maker community, and you've talked a lot about how the White House is really trying to prioritize this community and this issue as something that can really contribute, to our development overall. I'm sorry, I'm not being very clear, which I think is great. But I think a lot of the reason we're here today is because the maker community itself is not necessarily that inclusive thus far. There are issues of not just of access, but even of familiarity. It can be a really jargony world. And so I'm curious to know what OSTP is trying to do to not only work with makers, but to broaden the definition of what a maker is, to help more people become makers, aside from the people who might have the resources to do so right now.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point, and I think that there are real issues associated with equity inclusion that we need to address because there's a danger that that not everyone who wants to get involved will get involved. So a lot of our educational programs through the Department of Education, for example, are really target schools that need the most help. And I think there are some real opportunities to try to embed making into some of those programs. An example is the 21st Century Community Learning Center program, which is a $1 billion program. And that's an example of something where I think we could do a better job of trying to integrate making into those activities. I know that this is also something that the National Science Foundation has thought a lot about, which is, how do we increase participation in STEM by girls and women and underrepresented minorities. And one of the groups that the president has met with in the past or acknowledged in previous speeches, a group of teens from West Philly, a school that has a very high dropout rate. But this particular group of teens was involved in designing and developing a car to participate in the X Prize Automotive Challenge. This is about developing a car that could get over 100 miles a gallon. And all of the students that participated in that not only graduated, but virtually all of them went on to college. So this is a really powerful way to increase student engagement. And one of the things that we know from survey data is that one challenge associated with, particularly at the high school level, is a very large percentage of students are just bored out of their gourd. So obviously, if they're not engaged, they're not going to be doing the best work that they're capable of doing.
Other questions or comments? Yes.
Hi, Stephen Clark from New Jersey Makerspace Association, Rutgers University. Thanks for joining us today. One of the questions we have is, especially in grant areas for workforce development. The previous panel mentioned the lack of data, and we are currently working on a TAC grant right now with Goodwill and OIC, and our biggest dilemma is that most grants require you to show data on how your ideas work, and there just isn't any in this environment. What can we do to get past that?
Yeah, it really depends on the program. So I think some of the programs that we have, like the Workforce Innovation Fund administered by the Department of Labor, and programs, Department of Education programs like I3 Invest in Innovation. have a staged model of funding. So that is that they provide small amounts of money for new ideas that may be worth trying, and maybe don't have that evidence yet, but have a strong logic model, medium-sized grants for approaches that have some level of evidence, and then larger grants to scale up interventions that have been independently and rigorously evaluated and have a high benefit to cost ratio. So even in those programs that are focused on evidence, many of them have grants to allow for innovation and experimentation. Because obviously, if everything requires evidence, then it is very difficult to support new approaches that, by definition, don't have a lot of evidence supporting them.
Thank you. Hey, Tom. In a former life, I was a shop teacher, and of course, that was our original makerspace. And I see that it's tragic that we dismantled that infrastructure in the 80s and the 90s. And now I'm seeing, of course, the maker movement getting the traction. And everybody's wondering now why our kids are growing up and they don't know how to make. It's because probably a direct result of the dismantling of our shop programs. So my question is, what's the sustainability of this? How can we take this back to our schools and our districts? And what sort of traction is it going to have there, with respect to federal programs and funding, such as through Perkins and things like that? What is the overarching view that the administration has to make this a sustainable effort?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we definitely believe that there is an important role for career and technical education, and have been talking to folks in the Department of Education that are leading our CTE efforts. And one of the reasons we think there's such a strong case for this is that many manufacturers report that even though there's significant unemployment and people looking for jobs, that they can't find people with the necessary skills. And I think there's a couple reasons for that. One is that, as you noted, we have not been investing in things like shop, and I think that you can view aspects of the maker movement as sort of the 21st century equivalent of that. So we are interested in how we can use funding streams like Perkins and increase the awareness that state CTE directors have about the maker movement and the role that they can play in it, and helping to provide students with skills that will allow them to go out and get a great job in the manufacturing sector. I think one of the pieces of good news is that one can get started without a huge amount of money. So if you have a space and if you have the ability to invest in a relatively modest amount of equipment and materials, and if you have a teacher that is excited about this, we're hoping that one of the things that we can do is really motivate external support for this. So getting parents and engineers and large employers and small and medium-sized manufacturers to get interested in whether the schools and after-school programs in their communities are integrating making into their in-school and out-of-school educational opportunities. But I'd be very interested in your thoughts about what it is that the Department of Education and the CTE community could do to embrace making.
Hi, Tom. This is Phyllis with Fab Lab DC. Thank you and the White House for all the efforts you're taking to spearhead the initiatives. There are many of us, much like what you heard earlier from the Digital Harbor Foundation. There's those of us who have bootstrapped to get these spaces going, and we're doing the work in the trenches, but it's really tough. And we wonder how your matchmaking efforts might apply to us so that we can continue to take steps toward serving more really lifelong learners, the young people and people who are interested in embarking on new ways of learning and new jobs and careers. Thank you.
Okay. So one of the things that we're doing is to try to increase the number of companies that are getting involved in this. And an example is Intel, which has had a computer clubhouse program for a while. And they're also beginning to identify those regions of the country where they are a major employer and therefore have a STEM workforce that can help serve as mentors. Because I think that, that our first steps in getting this to happen and increasing the number of students that have the potential to participate in this are, number one, that there needs to be some place that kids can go, either in school or in a summer or after school program. Number two, they have to have at least some initial set of tools and materials that they can use. And the good news here is that you have a number of entrepreneurs who are developing low-cost tools. So one company in the Bay Area, for example, has developed a $250 computer numerically controlled machine tool that uses the equivalent of an X-Acto knife and cardboard as the raw material. So again, can we lower the cost of participation? And number three, that they need mentors. So I think in some cases, teachers can play that role, but I think being able to tap the external expertise that exists in their community is something that's very important. And we've been talking to both companies and engineering professional societies and a broad range of other stakeholders to find out how they can get involved. Now, a lot of the programs that that the Department of Education funds are block or formula grant programs where the money goes to states and to local school districts. So I think another very important piece of this is will states and local school districts make this a priority and use some of the funding that they already receive, like as I said, the $1 billion 21st Century Community Learning Center, in creative ways to be able to support these activities, or the money that goes to support career and technical education. I know from the work that has been done at the National Science Foundation, NSF has already been supporting a number of grants in this area, and we'll be doing an analysis of their current portfolio to see what they think are the most important gaps and what additional steps they can take to build on that.
And if you're watching via webcast, please feel free to go ahead and write questions or comments to our Twitter feed, and we'll go ahead and ask them in the room as well. Does anyone have any other questions? Yes.
Hi, I'm Steve Bump with Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineers, and I also do college accreditations with ABET. And I'm on the back end of my career and want to reinforce some of the things that came up here where I came up in the Heathkit world in an electronic shop in high school and went on to an engineering career. And again, what you said about I do some 2-year colleges and employment is not an issue except for which job to take. That's true in 2-year and 4-year programs. You just mentioned about the pool of experienced engineers and scientists we have, and one issue there is I've taught night school in college, given out hundreds of credits over the years. But with high school education, to bring that maker background, that's STEM enthusiasm into the classroom, that knowledge, we bring this up always in the IEEE with members, is you can't go into a classroom and teach high school with the blocks there. Much easier to teach college classes than in most any state to go in and teach high school, and that's an area possibly Department of Education, the federal government could get in to have some even accelerated programs there for later in life professionals that would want to do that once you're financially secure.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. And I think the other important thing that we can do is take advantage of our laboratories of democracy. So I think that there's a lot of experimentation that is going on all over the country. And I think one big opportunity we have is to find out, whether there are parts of the country that have come up with a creative solution to the problem that you identified, which is that you have STEM professionals who clearly have an important contribution to make, and right now it's a lot more difficult than it needs to be. One effort that we're supporting along those lines is a program called US 2020. It's trying to significantly increase the number of companies that have STEM mentoring programs. Nonprofit organizations like Citizen Schools serve as intermediaries between companies and school districts to provide some continuity and also to provide some training. And in many instances, they're taking advantage of the extended learning time, and rather than just doing another couple of hours of lectures, they're taking advantage of the STEM professionals that they now have access to, and using that to support project-based learning. So that's one approach, but I would be interested in others that we can help shine a spotlight on.
One more final question.
Hello, my name is Megan Hoffman. Thank you for coming today. I'm actually a student. I'm only 19 years old, and I've just started college last year. I spent a lot of time in maker spaces in high school, and one problem I did find was that there seemed to be an incentive in the high school system to avoid making spaces because of the risk and go into, if you had the ability, into higher education through advanced placement programs and international baccalaureate programs. And I'm wondering about how we can change the system to make it more incentivized for students to look at alternate routes to get to college or to start to learn in their own unique way that can help them benefit.
Yeah, I think there are a couple things. One is that we have been working with a coalition of engineering deans who are very supportive of the idea of having an AP engineering course, probably with a focus on engineering design. And so I think that is one potential model, because if you had an AP engineering course and there were, and schools said, all right, well, can I identify a engineering professional that could help teach that course? What are the other activities that students could do to prepare for an AP engineering design course? So I think that's one useful model to look at. Another is that we've been very supportive of the idea of badges. So, in the same way that Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts have merit badges, can we have a system of badges that reflects the range of project-based learning that students have been involved in? And I think portfolios is another interesting thing to look at. So particularly if engineering schools like MIT and hopefully many others decide that they're going to allow students to submit their portfolio as part of the application process, I think that's also going to provide students with an incentive to demonstrate what they've actually done and go beyond their GPA and their SAT scores.
So thank you so much, Tom, for being with us today. Can everyone give Tom a round of applause?